Hey everybody, so I have a really fun tutorial for y'all today. I'm going to show y'all how to make pumpkins on your knitting machine. So whether you have a Centro knitting machine, an Addi, or whatever brand you have, this pattern will work because it's the same technique. And I'm going to show you exactly how to make them. So I've made this one on my 22 pin Addi. So it's a little pumpkin that fits in the palm of your hand. And then I've made this larger one on my 46 pin Addi. And today I'm going to be using my 22 pin Addi to show y'all, but like I said, y'all can make these on any of y'all's knitting machines no matter what brand they are. Okay, but before we get started, I want to go over what yarn I used for my pumpkins. I know some people say that their knitting machines are real picky about the yarns. So far, I've used Bravo worsted in my Addis and it works great. I love this yarn and it works great. Really, any worsted weight yarn I've put in my Addis has worked. My Centros are a little bit more pickier, I will say that. But for the pumpkins, I used Hobby Lobby's I Love This yarn. This color is Desert Glaze, and I believe this color is called Sun Gold, and then I also used Burnt Pumpkin for this color. And for the stems, I just used any random worsted weight green yarn that I had. But you don't have to crochet your stems. If you're not a crocheter and you don't think you can crochet your stems, don't worry about it. You can use so many other things for stems. I've seen people break off little pieces of sticks, use cork. I've seen people use cinnamon sticks, even little leather tags. So there's so many different things you can put in the middle of the pumpkin for the stem, so you can get creative there. And also some of the other supplies you'll need to make your pumpkins is, if you're going to crochet the stem, you're going to need a 5mm crochet hook, but if you don't worry about that. But other supplies you'll need is some polyfill or some pillow stuffing to stuff your pumpkins, and then just like a tapestry needle or a yarn needle, scissors, and basically that's it. So it doesn't require a lot. So we go ahead and we'll jump into this tutorial, and I'm going to show you how to make y'all's own pumpkins with a knitting machine. Okay, so for making the pumpkins, I'm going to show y'all how to make them on my 22 pin Addi. This same process will work for both the larger 46 pin king size Addi or any other knitting machine. But I'm going to make a small pumpkin, and I will tell y'all on the larger size Addi how many rows I do, and on this one. But the process is going to be the exact same no matter what size of knitting machine you use. You might need more rows as opposed to less rows. But I'll tell you how many rows I did for each knitting machine when we get to that point. So to start our pumpkins, I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to go around to the first pin of the round of the machine, which is a black pin. So on my Addi, I have 3 black pins. We're going to start on this first pin. And so to cast on, I'm going to leave a decent sized tail. And then to cast on, we're going to take our yarn and go under this hook. We're gonna go behind the next one, and the next pin we're gonna go under, and we're gonna weave in and out all the way around. So we're gonna go behind this next pin, under the next pin, behind the next one, under the next one, behind the next one, under the next one. And you're just gonna do this all the way around. So you're gonna go around the back of one and make sure you go under on the next one. Behind, under, behind, under, behind, under. And when you make it around to the beginning, so when you make it to your very first pin, your yarn should go behind that very last pin. If it does not go behind that pin, then you missed a pin and you skipped one and messed up. So your last pin, your yarn will always go behind it. Okay, so I'm gonna put my yarn in there, and then I'm gonna turn my dial back to 0. And for the small pumpkin, we're going to knit 70 rows. For the larger pumpkin that I did on my 46 pin Addi, I did 90 rows. But for the small one, I'm going to knit 70 rows. And to start, after you cast on, you'll just start turning your handle. And if at first it kind of wants to not give a little bit, just keep going, and after the first round or 2, it'll be fine. You want to hold your yarn, but you don't want to hold it real tight. You just want to let the yarn basically glide through your hand and just guide the yarn up there, and then this way you can catch if any knots or anything come up. And then there we go. So we're just going to do this and knit around for 70 rows. After I get to 70 rows, I will catch back up with y'all and I will show you how I take my piece off my machine and I'll get back with y'all then. Okay, so I have just knit 70 rows. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our knitting off of our machine. Okay, so I cut a piece of yarn and I left a decent size tail. And what you're going to do is you're just going to go around the machine. This is our first pin. You're going to go around almost back to the beginning, but not all the way, because we don't want the machine to take off our stitches, but we want to finish off that very last round. Okay, so I went all the way around the machine, almost back to the very first pin. The very first black pin's right here. You don't want to go all the way completely around, or it'll push your stitches off and start pushing them off. And we don't want to. We want to pick these stitches up. So now we're going to we put a yarn needle on our tail, and this is the last stitch of the round. So you're going to start in the very first stitch of the round. You're just simply going to go up and pick off each stitch, each little loop. So there's a little like indentation in between the little pieces here. There's a little indentation where you can fit a yarn needle under. It makes it easier to grab your stitches. And you don't want to pull up too much, because if you pull up, you'll start pulling your stitches off the machine and you'll lose your stitches, and that makes it really hard together. I've done that before and had to start pieces over and then tried to fix stitches, and it's hard. So you're just going to grab, so you're just sticking your yarn needle and picking up all the stitches. So you're just going to work all the way around, picking up all your stitches. Okay, when you get back to almost to the end, you have to go forward a little bit now, because the machine won't drop the stitches off since you've already got them off. And you can make those pins go down and close so you can pick up the stitches on top of them. Okay, so now here's our piece. And this is what we got so far, and now we're going to turn this tube into a pumpkin. Okay, so now we're going to turn this tube into a pumpkin, and to do that, we are going to, first we're going to double it. So I'm going to stick my hand in here, and I'm going to grab this end, this yarn end, and then just the end of the stitches, and we'll pull it through till it's even with the other end. So then it doubles it and makes it twice as thick. But when you go to stuff the pumpkin, you'll sometimes be able, especially with a darker color like this, you'll be able to see polyfill when you stuff it. So if you want to be able to stuff it and not see through it, you'll want to go ahead and double it. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've pulled the other end about even with this end, and I've just smoothed it all out. And we're going to go ahead and start closing. I'm going to close the inside. You should just be able to take your yarn tail and pull, and those stitches should start to close. So I am just going to pull that, and I'm not going to pull it quite all the way closed, like completely, because if you leave just a little bit of a gap, it's easier when you go to stick your yarn needle through to form the pumpkin. Here in a little bit, and you'll see why. So I leave just a little bit of a gap open. And then I'm going to take the outside tail, and you should be able to pull it also, and pull it. I'm going to turn all these stitches in, pull this down a little bit more, and I'm going to close it. I'm not going to close it quite all the way. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap like that. So there's a little bit of a gap there, and I'm just going to tie these two ends together to secure them, so then this piece doesn't try to go back out. It'll stay here. And I'm going to just knot that, or triple knot it, so it stays. And I do not need these tails this long, so I'm gonna cut those a little bit shorter until I can weave them into the pumpkin. Okay, so now we have this. It looks like a mini little hat that you could flip up and make a mini little beanie, basically. What we're going to do now is, before we stuff it, we're going to go along the top here and gather it up at the top so we can pull it and close it. Okay, so I got a pretty good length of yarn because you're going to go around the top and cinch it closed, and you're also going to use this piece to go around the pumpkin to form like little ridges in your pumpkin, so you want a decent length of a tail. Okay, so to gather the top of the pumpkin, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a spot here in between the stitches, and I'm going to weave in and out. So I'm going to go under like those stitches there, pull that and leave a little bit of a tail, and then I'm going to skip the next one and go from the inside out under that one, and then I'm just going to do that all the way around. So I'm going to skip this next one, go under the top of that stitch, so you can see the little spots in between the stitches. I'm just going in between them. So I skip this one, go under this one, or you can even, I've seen people go across the top and pick up the little loops on the top. This is just how I do it. I don't pick the loops up, I just alternate and skip them. It really doesn't have to be precise. You don't even have to be under the exact spot on the stitch. As long as you're just going through there somewhere and grabbing it, it really all works. Because you're going to cover it up. You're not going to see it anyway, so if you go a little bit higher or lower than me, it really doesn't matter because it's going to be covered up with a stem and we're not going to see it. So okay, so once you made it back to where you started, we are now going to stuff our pumpkin before we cinch it closed. So we need to take some polyfill and you're going to stuff it. You don't want to stuff it too full, but you want to stuff it pretty good. And what helps with me is when we're going to make the ridges of our pumpkin here in a minute, is to hollow out the middle of it with your thumbs. So kind of like not stuff the middle of it completely. You're going to push all the polyfill out towards the edges. So we're going to try and make a round like a donut shape, so it'll look more like a pumpkin when we're through with it as opposed to like a big fat tube. So we're going to put it on the edges, and I'm going to poke my thumbs in there and kind of just push all the polyfill out to the sides. And that's why you don't want to overstuff it either, because you really don't want a lot of polyfill in the middle. It makes dragging your yarn needle through the middle of the pumpkin a lot easier. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to grab your yarn and you're going to pull it tight and cinch the top of it closed. So I'm just going to grab like that, and we're just going to go ahead, since I have both ends here, I'm going to go ahead and just knot them to secure that. Okay. Okay, so now what we're going to do now, we've closed both the top and bottom of our pumpkin, is we're going to take this yarn that we usually close the top with, and we're going to go through the middle of the pumpkin and back around and form the ridges. So on the small pumpkin, I think I do it 5 times. You can do it as many as you like. I normally do it 5 or 6 times to each pumpkin. So I kind of pinch the middle closed and just insert my yarn needle right through the middle and then out the other side. And after you do it once or twice, it'll help smash the pumpkin flat. And then you're going to pull pretty good, and you're just going to come out, since it's the first time, it doesn't matter where, and we're going to come down the pumpkin, hold it with my thumb, and go back through the middle. And then you're just going to poke it out through the middle again, being careful not to poke your fingers. I have done that many of times making these pumpkins. You're going to pull pretty good, and then you're just going to look and see where you want your next ridge to be. So I'm going to put it probably about right here. Just gonna kind of eyeball it and place the yarn wherever you want the ridges to be. I think I've done, on the small ones, I think I've done 5 times through. Sometimes the big ones I'll do more, 6. So usually about 5 or 6 is how many I do, but it really just depends on how many ridges you want your pumpkin to have. So there's another one, go probably right here. Okay, so after you go through your pumpkin however many times you want to pull it tight, and then go ahead and tie that end off and weave it in the pumpkin somewhere. And make sure you knot it and weave it in and get rid of it. And then I'm going to show you how to make the cute little stem for the middle. Now for the stems, you can put anything. You can put little pieces of wood or little sticks or twigs. You can put cinnamon sticks. You can put leather tags. or you can crochet a little stem. I'm going to crochet a stem because that's easiest for me because I have some green yarn right here, and I'm going to show you how I crochet my little stems. But there are so many things you can do for stems that you can get creative, but I'm going to show y'all how to crochet them. Okay, so for the stem, I just have some green worsted weight yarn and a 5mm crochet hook, and you're just simply going to start by making a slip knot and placing that on your hook. So for the small pumpkins, I did a little different for the big pumpkins, and I'll explain it as I go along. For the small pumpkins, I chain 10 stitches, and for the large pumpkins, you're going to want to chain 15. So since I'm doing a small one, I'm going to chain 10. 8, 9, 10. Okay, so there's 10 stitches. And for the small pumpkins, you're going to skip the first stitch and work 3 single crochet in each stitch across, and that's going to cause it to curl. So I'm going to skip the first stitch, work 3 single crochet in each stitch across. Now if I was making one for the large size pumpkins, I would chain 15 and start the second stitch, and I would work 3 half double crochet in each stitch across, and it would make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so you see by working 3 single crochet in each stitch how it makes it curly. Now you're just going to cut it, and we want to attach it to our pumpkin. So I'm just going to put one end on a yarn needle, and then you're going to take your pumpkin and just anywhere in the middle, you're going to attach it. So I'm just going to pick a stitch here down towards the bottom of the middle, poke my yarn needle through, and what I do is I just take these 2 tails and I just knot them, so I don't sit there and have to sew. And then once you knot them, pull them down, it pulls it right down to the middle. So I just knot them a couple times, and then you will weave these tails in the pumpkin, or if you're like me, I just poke them in the pumpkin somewhere and poke them out the side and cut that yarn up to the pumpkin. And then you can't see it, and you can do that with the other tail. And that is how easy it is to make a pumpkin on the knitting machine. I hope y'all enjoy this tutorial. If you did, be sure to give me a thumbs up. Ask any questions if you have any questions, and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And I hope you enjoy making lots of pumpkins.